My name is Neil Sanasuaso. I'm an account executive for LinkDrive, and we have Chad Kosterman here as well. Chad?
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time today. I've been with LinkDrive now for, almost 8 years. I manage customer success and operations. I'm excited to be here to talk to you about our solution, and a special thank you to our partners, BlueArrow, for setting up this webinar. Okay, all right, so let's just jump right into it. So, really from a LinkDrive standpoint, we focus on hauling smarter, not harder. You look at the climate that's out there today, really hard to keep drivers in the seats. In most cases, drivers are out the door within the first 90 days, and it's really hard to get drivers and workforces motivated. And ultimately what happens is when they're not engaged, they're not motivated, it raises their safety risk and decreases their fuel efficiency. But the challenge that organizations have is you only have time to really engage those individuals really at the bottom of that performance bell curve, right? So really that bottom edge, the individuals they have safety issues, maybe it's low in MPGs, right? And you don't have time to reach the individuals at the middle or the top. They start feeling disconnected, right? So when you look out, really across all these trucking companies, and you know who some of the best are in terms of fuel efficiency, MPG performance, right? And that's what's on everybody's mind today. It's like, how do you get those individuals to raise that bar, right? And if you think about those individuals, they're not talking just primarily MPGs. I mean, MPGs are really, that's just the fuel that you're burning. What they're doing is they're talking to their drivers about behaviors, and they're coaching on behaviors. So a big part of what we're going to be talking about today is how do you really engage that workforce the right way for lasting behavioral changes that really influence those right habits to ensure you're getting best-in-class fuel efficiency, right? So, simply throwing more money at the problem, it doesn't work. Incentive programs just aren't going to fix it, right? So you look at it, companies and how they're engaging workforces today, how they're engaging their drivers. There's low engagement. You don't have enough time to frequently engage individuals. There's a lack of coaching. Most driver managers, they've never driven trucks. They don't know the difference between an APU or an EPU. They don't know what to coach on. They don't know what to talk about. And trying to put a driver coach in the cab of every truck is just not realistic. And in so many cases too, there's delayed feedback. So how do you give drivers meaningful feedback, that's timely, so that they can look at that information and understand, okay, how do I get better? What do I need to be focusing on? And in so many cases too, there's unfair performance assessments, right? You're not taking into consideration things like weather, terrain, things that are outside of the driver's control. So when they look at how you're assessing their performance, they have confidence in it, right? You want to make sure you're taking those things into consideration. For example, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is cruise control, right? And what we do is we actually recognize when it's raining or when it's snowing, and we extract that from the calculation. So when drivers see that information, they see what that cruise control percent is, they can have trust in that. The last thing you want to do is tell a driver, hey, your cruise control percent was way down, so that's part of your bonus, you're not going to get it. And he's like, well, yeah, but it was snowing. It was snowing for half of the month. You don't want me to cruise, right? We automatically do that. All the metrics that we look at, we ensure that we're taking what's outside of the driver's control so they can have confidence in it. We want them to have fair metrics. So when you put all these things together that most organizations are doing today, unfair performance assessments, delayed feedback, lack of coaching, there's just a loss of trust, right? Drivers feel neglected. They don't trust the numbers that you're sharing with them, so they're just not motivated. They're like, yeah, whatever. I'm not looking at that. I'm going to do whatever it is that I want to do. Okay. So our focus really is on changing the game. And to turn the industry around, you really have to make sure you're putting drivers first. From the day that we opened our doors, really that's been our focus, is ensuring that we have fair metrics that we're sharing with drivers, we're giving it to them in a timely manner so they can really understand how am I performing? What do I need to be focusing on? And I'll show you examples of how we're doing that today. And the great part here is we're not putting more load on your back office. We're not putting more load on your operational teams. We're actually taking work off their shoulders and communicating that information effectively, not just to one driver, but to each and every one. So when you think of that entire performance bell curve of how your fleet is performing, we're not talking about just the bottom edge, we're shifting that entire thing. And when you look at those best-in-class organizations, that's what they're doing. They found ways to reach each and every individual driver. I'll show you how we're doing it. So our focus is really a fully automated driver-centric fleet performance management solution that ensures it's engaging and empowering every driver to reach their peak. right? And driver-centric is really, really important. We want to make sure that drivers feel good about this information. They trust the information. They don't trust it, they don't feel good about it, you're not going to get their buy-in, right? So we do all the hard work of aggregating that information. We clean it, we normalize it. Of course, we're taking in your geotab data. We can pull in other third-party data feeds, and we take into account things like weather and terrain, as I had mentioned, right? Even things like idle percent, right? We know when it's too hot or if it's too cold, if your truck has an APU, if it doesn't. And in those cases, we extract those temperatures, right? So like, for example, if it's 110 degrees and the APU can't keep up, we extract that information. We want to make sure that's not going to be counted against them. You don't want the driver baking inside of the vehicle just simply so they can keep their idle percent low. If it's outside of their control and the APU isn't keeping up, you want to take that into account. We do that automatically. Okay, and then we take what's most relevant, we take all that positive coaching and reporting, and it's tuned to your organizational goals and culture, and we reconnect your drivers. We want to make sure we're building a winning culture and trust that you need to really succeed and win. And when you talk about things like culture and you think about your voice, so what I'm going to show you in some of this coaching is that, you know, we have our own native library, and most of the organizations that we work with, they say, hey, that's good enough. We really like the way that you're coaching drivers. But we also have some companies that have very specific ways they talk about things like crews, very specific ways they talk about safety, right? They may have their own nomenclature, they may have their own, you know, safety six, all these different ways that are really pinned to who you are as an organization. So within our system, we have the capabilities of swapping out that coaching. We have the capabilities of tuning that coaching. And as part of working with our end customers, we expect to do that. If you look at our coaching and you say, you know what, I like what you're doing here as it relates to cruise control, but I really want to talk to drivers this way about safety, right? And you think of that best-in-class coach that you have, we tune our system to that, and then that reaches everybody. Right, so that one individual that's trying to get to everybody, now you can leverage and you can scale that individual across your entire organization. Okay, so you know, and really this last point, you know, bringing Nobel Prize winning behavioral science practices to transportation, this is really, really important, because when you think about data, right, and the data that you're getting out of your systems, data that's coming out of Geotab, another third-party application, right? Data is just the ante to sit at the table. Everybody's got data. So what? What are you going to do with that data? How are you going to engage your workforce? How are you going to motivate them? How are you going to make that? How are you going to get them bought in, right? And that's why we started working with the behavioral insights team, gosh, probably about 2 years ago. They're global thought leaders in behavioral psychology and behavioral economics, and they leverage concepts like nudge theory, right? And the whole point of that organization is, how do you motivate organizational change and behavior, right? How do you do it in a positive way? And you know, this is, I mean, these are Nobel Prize winning approaches. And, you know, Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize for nudge theory, he's on their board, right? They've worked with, I think, 70 countries this past year. I mean, they're massive. Their focus is on how do you reach that workforce? How do you change those behaviors, not just for tomorrow, but lasting behavioral change? Put these practices in place. So we leverage their EAST framework, and really that's all around making it easy. So the collection of the information, the cleaning of the information, we take all that off your operational team. And how do you communicate that, right? How do you get it out to the drivers? We take care of that as well with our LinkDrive application. You'll see that too through the demo. And then we make it attractive. We want drivers to feel good about it. This isn't just like, you know, just let's see, like a quick snapshot from an Excel spreadsheet. That's not what we're doing here. We want drivers to feel good about it, feel drawn to imagery, feel drawn to colors. You see this coming through, okay? And then social, we want drivers to see that, hey, I'm getting compared to my peers. And when we say like getting compared, you know, we also, within our system has built-in profiles. So we know if someone's a local driver, we know if someone's over the road, dedicated, right? So the tuning that we put in place and the way that we set up our system ensures that when you're looking at how you're ranking against someone else, if you're a local driver, you're not getting compared to OTR, right? Local guys just, you know, they're just going to have a higher idle percentage, right? Well, if I have a higher idle percentage, I don't want that to work against me, because the OTR guy who's got a nice BHVAC APU, you know, that he gets 2% idle, but I'm stopping, I'm in town all the time. Of course, I'm going to have a higher idle. So we ensure that we're looking at driver profiles. We break that data apart as we're tuning and setting up the system so that it is fair for drivers. So locals get compared to locals, OTRs get compared to OTRs, but we can take that really deep depending upon how far we want to go. And then of course, timely, right? We're not talking about work for your team. This happens daily, weekly, monthly. Everything's fully automated from the data that we're collecting to the communication to the drivers, okay? And I'll show you real examples of this in the demo. This is going to be anonymized data from our customers, so you'll see exactly what folks are seeing out in the field today. So kind of back to this point of automation, right? So from a real-time standpoint, and this is our cycle of positive driver engagement, making sure we're reaching individuals, again, work that you're not going to have to do. In real time, we have LinkDrive. This gives every driver that's out there in your fleet the ability to understand how they're performing. It's real time. Anytime they want to understand how they're doing, all that data is right there. They can see how they're tracking week to week. They can see their last monthly report. They can see how they're trending against others. They know exactly where they're up and where they're down, right? And this is unbiased data. This isn't, Jim from the office calling in saying, hey, this week you're up against this driver. This is data, right? They can see exactly how they're doing against their peers. From a daily standpoint, we have My Drive reports. In My Drive reports, think of them as like a ledger of what you did for the day. We give out things like badges. This is a big part of when we start nudging individuals, that nudge theory. And then on a weekly basis, we have customized coaching messages, really reinforcing those positive things that you want them to be working on, and then also showing the performance trending, how they're doing week to week. Then monthly, we net all this up in a MyScore report across fuel, efficiency, productivity, and safety, and I'll break all that down for you in the demo. So this is LinkDrive. Again, we're really following that EAST framework, making it easy, attractive, social, and timely. Has all the information for the drivers right at their fingertips. I'm going to walk you through this as we do the demo. And what I'll tell you is this is a web app, so I'm going to do it right through my browser, and I'll also show you how you see that directly through Geotab Drive. Right, so no additional logins or anything like that you have to set up or worry about for your drivers. Okay, here's some examples of the automations that go out to drivers, so a little bit more visibility into those. On the left is our My Drive report. And in this, again, this is like that daily ledger, that daily journal, right? We're showing average highway speed, total mileage, drive MPG. We give out badges. And frankly, the badges are simply recognition for the drivers, right? Was he in bad wind? Did he have bad weather? Was he, going uphill, downhill, et cetera? All these badges are simply recognition, okay? And if you can see here, there's these little arrows. If you can see my mouse moving. So these arrows aren't the direction they're driving. This is actually wind direction, right? So we have a lot of data that we enrich. So like when you want to really understand, is it someone driving and they're cruising? Is it snowing or raining? Think of it as like little data cubes that we have that, across North America. Someone's driving through those data cubes. We can see, was it raining? Was it snowing during that time when they drove through? What was the wind direction? Did they get a crosswind, headwind, tailwind? We do all this because we really need to understand what's going on out there on the road to ensure that we have accurate reflections of driver performance. But this particular picture, what we show to individuals, it's really nothing more than a positive engagement with the driver on a day-to-day basis. It's that nice little nudge, right? And you'd be surprised on social media, you'll see drivers popping up, and there's a great story that I always like to reflect on, which was, one driver at the end of the day, he's like, man, I really got my butt kicked out there. I didn't perform the way I wanted it to. He went to bed, he was frustrated. The next day he woke up and he looked at his My Drive and he said, you know what? Actually, I did pretty good. It was, I was dealing with some tough winds. I was in some tough terrains. I actually did pretty good. I feel good about that. And he posted that on social media for us to see. And it's, for us, that's great, because really a big part of this is truly mindset. It's about changing the way that people think and they approach their jobs, feeling good about it. The next is our My Coach coaching. So on a weekly basis, what we're doing is we have metadata that's associated to what's going on out in the field, right? We can see if someone is in the wind and in the weather, are they dealing with a lot of deliveries, all that kind of stuff. And we take that into account, but then also we bring in as well, what's that one area we want them focusing on? And again, we get into the demo, I'll break that apart a little bit more, but as you look at this MyScore report, it's really that first thing that we see, that area that will impact their total score the most, the area that's going to help their performance the most. What we do is we create a customized coaching message for each and every driver. It doesn't matter if it's 10 drivers, it doesn't matter if it's 10,000 drivers, right? Each driver is going to get their own customized coaching message that takes into account what was going on that week, gives them a nice little nudge in terms of where you want them focusing. It then ends it up and kind of completes it with a little attaboy, right? And this coaching right here, again, this happens automatically on a week-to-week basis, and everything you see here is entirely tunable, right? So when you think about safety, again, that's where it can be customized exactly to how you want to talk to your drivers, how you want to, how do you articulate safe driving? There's specific things you say. Completely dynamic. We can change that for organizations, and we expect to. And the monthly My Score report is basically, it's netting up everything at the end of the month across fuel efficiency, productivity, and safety. But again, think about that from the standpoint that, everybody's focus right now, MPG, fuel efficiency, right? It's a lot of underlying behaviors and engagement that you need from your workforce to ensure that you get that best-in-class fuel efficiency, right? So this is reaching everybody. So what you're looking at right now is our My LinkDrive portal. And our focus really with the My LinkDrive portal is we want to make sure that all the data, of course, is there. There's a traceability in terms of communication to drivers. You can go really deep. You can look at trending information. But our focus as an organization is that we don't want you to have to spend a lot of time in our portal. We're doing that work for you. But if you do have to go in there, you can go in and you can trace back, routes. You can look at how someone was trending over time. You can take a look at what we communicated to them. It's all there, really easy to use. And what I'll tell you too is as we start walking through that, some of the data that's in there, because for Geotab customers, we pull that data from their system. And if you know their data, there's discrepancies sometimes. We have logic that's in there to clean that up, to enrich that data, and to make that data better for you, easier to view, easier to understand. Okay. So in terms of accessing our solution, on the left-hand side, you're looking at My LinkDrive, okay? And really what happens is we're just an add-in, right? So we're just gonna show up in that My Geotab menu list. So as soon as we create that add-in, we're there, no additional logins, right? Same thing for your drivers. They are using Geotab Drive. It's gonna be the same principle, right? We're just gonna turn on that add-in and you're gonna have LinkDriver there for all your drivers, okay? Really simple, straightforward. We don't want to have any additional logins, okay? Next is just to briefly touch on this. I'm sure a lot of folks that are on this call are really thinking about, well, how do I create incentive programs? How do I create recognition programs? And what I'll tell you is we have our total score that you can absolutely leverage for that. That really brings together the entire picture, that holistic picture of how that driver's performing, right? Which allows you really to go beyond MPGs. Again, MPG, just that fuel that you're burning, right? You got to take into account all those underlying behaviors, right? So now you can start aligning all your incentive programs. And what that allows you to do is when we talk about our total score and you look at our solution, everything is tuned to your organizational goals and objectives. You may say, hey, fuel is the most important thing for me, or safety is the most important thing for me. Fine, we'll set it up that way. We expect that this is your piece of canvas. As we sit down with our customers, whether it's the low-level metrics that are important to you or it's the high-level pillars and groups, we set those up accordingly for you. And I always think of it as like that infomercial of that set it and forget it, and you see that turkey that's just rolling, right? So once that's set up for you, all that communication is taking place, okay? So now what you're really doing is you're paying for the performance you want. Individuals are no longer complaining, saying, hey, I'm 70,000 pounds in the Rockies. Every time I come in, you talk to me about, well, your MPGs aren't very good. You got to do a better job, right? We take those things into consideration to ensure that your drivers are now, they're not concerned about that, right? It's easier to fill those tougher routes. And then, of course, lastly, is don't lose drivers to good spreadsheet or to spreadsheet errors. And really, this one for me, I've been in the trenches with operational teams for really going on 8 years, and I've sat down with teams at the very early years of LinkDrive and looking at these spreadsheets and how people are pulling information together, doing VLOOKUPs from one spreadsheet to another, pulling it in from these different sources, waiting, right, taking it, reviewing it with individuals. Don't lose drivers to that, okay? We do all that completely automated for you. We don't use spreadsheets, okay? So what we're seeing out in the field right now, we see a 25% increase in on-road safety. We see 3% fuel savings fleet-wide, right? And that's really dependent upon how do you embrace the solution, right? There's individuals that are out there that are seeing a lot more. There's individuals that are seeing less, right? It's all around how you engage your organization and really get behind the program. We see a 10-time increase in perceived performance fairness. Really, there's nobody out there in the industry that automatically takes into account weather, temperature, traffic, terrain, et cetera. We do all that. There's a 10% increase in driver retention, 25 times more positive driver engagement and coaching. I mean, think about this. On a daily, weekly, monthly basis, we're engaging each and every one of the drivers in your fleet, right? We're providing them the coaching that they need, customized and tuned to them, all aligned with your organizational goals and objectives. And then lastly, we're maximizing cross-departmental ROI. And really what I mean by that is that you no longer have to go and pull data out of this other system and then pull data out of Geotab, crank through this report. We do all that for you. You don't have to worry about cleaning, normalizing, and how do you actually get it out to individuals? Email it, right? This all just flows out to them automatically. Okay, so from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition over down. So you should now see the My LinkDrive portal. Okay. All right, so really what you're looking at here is a nice, clean, modern portal. I'm going to get into features and functionality, but what I'll tell you is also putting this on your phone, nice and clean, really easy to use. Again, this is all about taking work off of your operational team's shoulders. Okay, so typically where I like to start is I like to start more from like a telematics standpoint, right? So looking at things like live map, telematics type reporting, because we have all that information in there and we do some pretty unique stuff with it to make it even better. Okay, so let's just take a look at live maps for a minute and take a look at that. You can go and you can do things like show paths, really easy to use. And honestly, I use it all the time on my personal phone. I'm always going in and looking at drivers, talking to our support team. So super easy to use. And I always think of it as like you're going home, you have to go and take a look at what's that driver doing. You're filling up your car with some gas or whatever. And really easy. Where is he? Okay, what do I need to do? Oh, there he is. Okay, you can quickly cut over to different reports, all associated to that driver. Super, super simple, easy to use. So we automatically do things like add in stops, but we also do stuff too, which is pretty cool, where you can add in things like wind speed, air temperature, idling temperature. And we see some of our larger customers, what they'll do is they'll basically have a map of all their drivers. And what you can do is you can put on weather events. So they'll have that up there on big screens and you'll see, hey, here's where my workforce is. And oh, by the way, there's a bunch of individuals that are starting to go through some pretty nasty weather, right? Just from a visibility standpoint, when you think about your operational team, like what are my assets doing out there on the road, okay? So, live map, tons of features and functionality. I mean, you can go backwards and forwards in terms of time frames, add in longer durations if you want to see those trace routes of maps and all that kind of stuff. So it's all there for you, okay? Next is company summary report. And, really what we're showing here, and you can see the difference, and there's, fleets that we're showing, okay? So there's a couple different fleets. But what I want to highlight here is, there's a lot of functionality here as well. So you can do things like you can plot information, you can show, rolling average windows. You can do this over multiple months. So really, really easy to understand simply from a telematics standpoint, right? And I'll differentiate here when I start getting into more of these underlying behaviors with the company score report. But this kind of stuff these are things that you've seen before, right? But you got miles, total fuel, drive time, overall MPG, idle percent. But what I'll tell you is when we pull this data in from Geotab, and again, this kind of goes back to that earlier point that I made, is we see some pretty funky stuff, right? We'll go through, we clean that, so that when you're going through and looking at reports, if you spent time like looking at idle, and I'm sure there's people that are on this call that know this, it's like, why did that guy show, that he burned like 10,000 gallons of fuel from one day to the next, right? There's like weird things that you'll see like that. We go through and we clean that data. So you have a really nice view here of clean data. You're not going to get hung up on maybe false negatives and false positives. So we do a lot of extra work to make sure it's nice and clean, okay? And again, this just goes to the fact that we want to make sure that when drivers are getting this information, that it is as accurate as possible. So we're always going in, we have algorithms that run that look at like, hey, it's just kind of like a weird data set that's come in and it alerts us. We go in and we can make changes and make sure that that's cleaned up, okay? Next is driver trends. And, so again, this really goes to my point that we can go really, really deep in terms of, how drivers performing, how they're trending. So it's all there if you want to really drill in. But again, our system is intended to really leverage those automations, right? Reach your entire workforce. But what this just shows you is there's a lot of flexibility here that you can get views into, 30, 60, 90, 14-day windows. How are individuals trending? Really clean and easy to use. And we do stuff like, you can go down if you wanted as well, and you can click on some of these My Drives, right? So if I was to click on one here for like June 2nd, this is Kurt's My Drive. So, and I'll show that in just a few moments as well. So, but it gives you a perspective of, if I want to go deep, all the information's there, right? But my expectation really is that you're doing that more in the edge case, right? You have other things to do. You have, drivers that are terming, you get new people that are coming on, you get orientation, you get a million different things going on, right? So that's why we've designed our system. It's all around how do you reach everybody, right? Not adding more to operational folks. So what I'm showing here, these are My Drive reports. I did some filtering just to kind of show examples, again, of really taking into consideration. And this is starting to move beyond just the core telematics piece, right? We're starting to talk about those positive engagements, and little nudges with individuals. Okay, so what you can see here is, here's a great example of a driver that's out there on the road, really dealing with a fairly tough day, right? So in some nasty winds, in some nasty weather, and again, you can see those winds. You can take a look, wind direction, crosswinds, tailwinds, headwinds. You can see how they're being impacted. You can see the speed profile. You can see the weather in terms of what they're encountering, right? So it's all right there. And again, this is a picture for your driver, and just primarily it is simply just to create that positive engagement, the positive nudge. And what we see a lot of our customers doing is they take these as well, like HR departments. They take these and they give out, little accolades to drivers, little thumbs up. I mean, like, wow, you really killed it yesterday. Take a look at what Josh was doing out there on the road. He was really encountering some tough wind and some bad weather, yet he had a great day, right? That's what this is about, right? It's all the behavioral psychology and behavioral economics to get people bought in and becoming more engaged within your organization. Okay. So next, really, where I'm transitioning to, this is the company score. And I talked about the total score earlier. And, just to hit on this piece, this is really the framework and the foundation around when you start thinking about driving behaviors, right? You start thinking about the driving behaviors. What are those underlying behaviors that lead to good MPG, that lead to good safety scores, safety metrics, right? So just starting kind of high level here and looking at this, and you say, okay, fuel efficiency, productivity, and safety. Those are our main groups, okay? And the question always is, well, what is fuel efficiency, productivity, and safety? I'm going to break all that down so you can see the underlying metrics. But what's happening here is there's these 4 groups, right? We can tune and we can adjust those. We can weight those to what you want to see. If I want safety to be the highest priority, okay, maybe we weight that for 40. Right? And then fuel is 20, and whatever you split efficiency and productivity, okay? And even the underlying metrics. So the total score is just a representation of a composite view of those metrics, right? So it's just doing the simple math, adding them up and dividing, okay? And that's where you get the total score from. We also show this nice little distribution down here, just, kind of gives you visibility into your fleet. You can use this more of like a BI tool if you want. You can start drilling into these. But really where I want to go from here is, let's just take a look at a few drivers. Okay, so here's Billy Olson. This is for the month of June. Let's just click on Billy, right? So when you click on Billy, this is the My Score report, and it's still active right now. It's about halfway through the month of June. And we do that on a week-to-week basis. And I'll tell you the reason why we do that, and as well as we give week-to-week updates to the drivers, is because statistically, if you're really looking at the statistics behind this, what you find is that data is really, really noisy, right? Last thing you want to do is tell a driver one day, hey, you're awesome. The next day, no, you're not that good. Day after that, oh, you're amazing. Next day after that, no, you're not that good, right? So you have to look at the trends and understand what that data is really doing, because last thing you want to do is give drivers false positives and false negatives. That's where that mistrust comes from as well, right? So you have to make sure you're looking at it within proper windows. Otherwise, you run the risk of just shooting yourself in the foot by saying you're great. Next day, nah, maybe not so much, right? So just a little background in terms of why we do it week to week. Okay, so I call out this particular individual, Billy Olson, not because he's the best driver, right? Of course, it's like, well, okay, you're going to show me a guy that's doing great. No, I'm showing you a guy that's their best driver because most of the time you have nothing to say to that best driver. You have nothing to say to the individuals in the middle. How do you motivate them to get better, right? And what I'll tell you is that what happens is when you start giving individuals in the middle tidbits of how they can do better, they start chasing the people at the top. The people at the top like being there. And they say, well, hold on a second. People are catching up to me. I just bumped from rank 1 down to rank 5. What the heck is going on, right? And then they start moving. This is the whole principle behind how do you shift that bell curve, right? So when you're looking at this, okay, Billy, well, what the heck would I say to him, right? First things first, when we show this information to someone, the first thing we do, of course, is we show them how they're trending, month over month, how they're ranking, how many drivers they're being compared to. And this is one of our smaller fleets that we use. It's all real data, it's anonymized. But the first thing we do is we show what you did a good job on, right? No matter if you're the best driver or if you're the worst driver, okay? But then next, what's that area that you can make some improvements on? So an individual like Billy, people probably aren't talking to him and saying, hey, you're number 1, but I actually need you to improve in these particular areas, right? That's what this does, is it gives those individuals, the best drivers, the drivers in the middle, all that information on where they need to get better, right? So when you start thinking about things like deceleration above a threshold, right? Like all these like safety related behaviors, consider them kind of like smooth driving, right? All those have a nice, tight, moderate correlation to fuel as well, right? When you really start looking at it statistically, there's a nice correlation. I think everybody knows that, right? So this is like, okay, now Billy knows I need to maybe be easing up in terms of my decelerations, right? So he's starting to have a little bit more forward thinking. He's thinking about those exit ramps. He wants to be bringing this down to make himself better in that area. Guess what? Fuel efficiency is going to go up as well, okay? So in this particular point too, before I go past it, is important because this area right here, that one area, the most important area that's going to give them the best bang for their buck, that's going to bring their total score up that I showed you, this is the same area when we coach someone. We bring in that little tidbit of information around a deceleration above a threshold, right? We give them that little nudge. And then we have a full library of all the different messages that are associated to a deceleration above a threshold. Okay, so there's a number of different ways to engage individuals. There's a number of different ways to say this, but one thing we don't say is we never say, hey, bad job, you're giving negative. It's always, hey, try this, give this little, try to focus on doing this. Think a little further down the road, plan for that traffic, right? All those different things, giving them nice little nudges. But then what we do at the bottom here is we break out how that total performance score is being calculated. Okay, so we've worked with drivers hands-on, hundreds of drivers have given us feedback on this. And when we initially started, giving out my score reports to people and drivers, they were very aggregate and high level. We didn't show drivers this kind of visibility. And what we found is that drivers said, well, okay, you just gave me a 60 in terms of safety. What the heck does that mean? Like, what were you looking at? And what should have I gotten? How am I ranking against my peers, right? So what started off at a very high level aggregate number because we were nervous about telling drivers like all these different metrics and giving them this kind of visibility, we found that we were led there by the drivers because the drivers were just saying like, I don't believe in that 60, show me how you got there, right? So that's what we're doing here, right? And we continue to work hands-on with drivers and getting feedback from them. What else can we do? How can we make this better? Frankly, these two areas over here, it's absolutely 100% from drivers. So what I'm showing is, these are those groups again, right? Fuel efficiency, productivity, and safety. You can take a look at the different metrics that are associated to those groups, okay? Like productivity, again, this is all, think of it as your piece of canvas, okay? So if you said, well, I only care about total miles, or maybe it's like number of days driven, right? We have numerous metrics that we can utilize and make sure that we match what you need within your organization. Same thing with safety, right? This is a basic vanilla set that we have right now: acceleration before hard decel, deceleration above a threshold, hard deceleration at highway speeds, hard deceleration right before a turn, speed limit, right? But what you'll also notice what we do too is we normalize that, right? This is what happens if you have a local driver. And this isn't just about the number of instances. We actually, what we do is we look at subcritical events. We look at decelerations at -4 because we want to understand truly how are individuals performing, right? If you do a -7, well, you missed the guy that's at a -6.5, right? You want to statistically understand who's your best, who's the middle, and who are the individuals that are really in trouble, right? Who are the individuals that are doing -9s, right? And that's what this is going to give you the visibility into how your workforce is performing, right? Because historically, a guy like a Billy, you probably are not going to pick up that he can still improve. Billy's going to be coming back and saying, well, how do I improve? Like, nobody's saying anything to me. Now we can talk to him, right? Now we can share with him what's that one area that you're weakest in, even your best individuals. Okay, so again, we normalize that information because we want to make sure it's fair. This isn't just a -7, like, quantity of instances. And we've seen people do that where people are getting flagged trying to find a parking spot. There was an example I remember years back where the guy didn't want to wipe out the side of his garage when he was backing up his truck, so he jammed on the brakes and he lost his bonus, right? Is that a true reflection of safe driving? I don't think so, right? And then when you look at things like cruise control percent, I brought this up earlier. If it's snowing or raining, we extract out that time from the calculation. Idle time, we remove short idles. EPU charging cycles, we remove, if it's too hot or too cold, right? So we want to make sure these metrics are fair. And again, we'll tune this to driver profiles. You can take a look and you can group by OTRs dedicated, you can group by fleets, all that's there and that functionality is for you. But the big question then is, well, how does this get out to drivers? Okay, so I'm going to move past Billy. And what I'm going to be looking at right now, this is LinkDrive. Okay, now this is just it's a web app, right? So I'm showing it in my browser. So when you're looking at this, on a tablet, it's, just the dimensionally, it's a little bit different, right? But I'll spread this out a bit. So what will happen, again, this is when someone has GeoTab Drive, they tap on LinkDrive, they get all this access. First and foremost, we have nice little widgets, right? That you don't have to go and click anything. You can see, okay, what's my coaching this week? Okay, how am I trending in terms of my total score? How am I ranking in terms of leaderboards, right? So for coaching, for example, you can go and click into that too. You can go back. You have all that historical coaching that's been sent to you week to week. We never throw that away, okay? And then total score, we also have, I talked about weekly visibility. Remember I said, we do it on a week-to-week basis. This is published on the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, the 28th, all right? And so you get a guy like, maybe it was Billy last time. He's going in and taking a look and saying, well, okay, where am I doing good? What do I need to be focusing on, right? So you can see across all the metrics that you're looking at. And this is another one of our customers where this out of route is actually, we're pulling data in from a few other systems. So this is an integration, which is something I haven't talked about either. So when you think about that holistic view of all those different systems that you might have, out of route for this particular customer is TMW and Keep Trucking, okay? And the DRE points, this is actually a metric that they've been using for about the past 5 years. It's a custom metric for this particular customer. So they publish their own API, we pull it right in. Again, this is taking work off them so they don't have to go and crank through that DRE information. They don't have to crank through the outer route. We do it all for them. We bring it in here and we weight it accordingly. Okay, so immediately as a driver, you can see, am I up or am I down? Where do I need to be focusing on? There's no surprises. And as a driver, there's nothing worse than finding out at the end of the month that, hey, you missed your bonus. It's like, why didn't you tell me, halfway through the month? Why didn't you tell me as I'm getting closer? I missed that, and I actually depend upon that bonus. That bonus is important to me. You could have helped me, you didn't. Now I'm frustrated, right? So this helps you steer away from that. We have the My Drive reports as well. So this gives visibility into everything that's going on out in the field, that day-to-day view. So you can go in and take a look. You can take a look and you have, all those badges again, and drivers can share this information too. As long as your organization is comfortable with that, they can share it with other drivers if they want to. You can star these and you can add those as favorites, all right? The coaching I already hit on, the My Score report. This is an exact reflection of what your operational team sees, right? So there's complete transparency of what is going on here. There's no waiting of that report to get out. It automatically goes out right after the end of the month. So the drivers, you're not calling a driver and saying, hey, do you see how you ranked? They know how they ranked, right? This, again, taking work off your shoulders, operational team folks, okay? Let's see, My Score trends I hit on. There's leaderboards as well. Those can be customized and tuned to your organization, right? so you can see how you're doing with those leaderboards. And then of course we have a really nice rich help system. So you can go in and you can get visibility into my drive reports, my score reports, leaderboard pages. And what I'll tell you too is that in terms of onboarding drivers, the first time that a driver accesses these icons, it brings up a nice little introduction for each and every area that they're accessing. So I'm gonna pause, take a breath and stop here because I know we got about 5 minutes left, and just see if there's any questions.
All right, great presentation, and a couple questions to throw your way. Let's see here. So first one, obviously our customer base is geotab. So the question was, how long does it take to get data from geotab in your system, and how does that work in general?
Yeah, great question. So the connection itself, so we have an implementation guide that we share with our end customers. It literally takes about 15 minutes. It's a simple process. The end customer will follow that. They walk through it. It's set up and the data starts flowing into our system. So really quick, simple, straightforward.
Okay, awesome. And we always hear questions about pilots or how does it work? How do we see the program without just seeing a demo? What is y'all's process with showing a customer with their data how it all works and getting drivers involved specifically?
Yeah, so another great question. So basically what happens is when we make that data connection, that's expected to be set up for a pilot. And typically what we do, I mentioned and talked about statistics numerous times during this call, right? So what happens is we look at the data for about a month, right? So we have that data flowing in because we really want to understand the statistical nature of that data, right? So we listen to the data about a month, we share insights with folks that we're doing pilots with, and then after that month is complete and we're going into month 2, we start giving them visibility and access into my LinkDrive, right? And also showcasing this information to drivers. We can turn it on for them. We can give them access as well because, driver feedback and driver buy-in is so important, right? So it's available to drivers and to the operational team.
Awesome. And you've already answered I'm actually going to reword a question we got, but we hear this same question about several different things quite often, and it's always about driver adoption. Yep. We get the, hey, you don't know our drivers, they'll never go for this, right? And we've seen the exact opposite with some really great solutions. What do you think? You've already mentioned it a few times in this presentation, but what is the big reason why a driver gets excited about this program?
I mean, personally, I think it's because, they know that it's a fair representation, right? There's really nobody out there that's giving them visibility quickly to help them understand where they're going up and going down, so like all the flow of that information, easy available information to know how they're doing, right? And they're not waiting on their driver manager. It's coming in, it's a holistic picture, but also it's fair, right? I mean, we're taking steps that nobody in this industry is doing. Nobody takes into consideration, is the temperature too high or too cold? Was it raining or snowing? Right. So that's when, drivers can start having confidence because there's so many cases. I mean, I've seen it where, one of our very first customers, there was great drivers that were out there, but they were missing bonus because their EPU, they basically had an EPU and their batteries were just degrading overnight, or they basically degrading over time. And what happened was the trucks were having to wake up at all times of the night and having to recharge those batteries, which drove their idle percent up. And when it did that, it knocked a lot of really good drivers out of bonus. Well, with our system, we can recognize when those EPU charging cycles are taking place. So those folks that were, they're getting dinged for things that are outside of their control, we extract that and we show truly what's under, drivers' control to ensure they're getting recognized, to ensure it's a fair assessment of performance, and they're making bonus. They're getting the right recognition. That's the last thing you want. It's like, imagine yourself as like, you're going into the office every day and your boss is like, well, I'm going to have to ding you if, you show up late twice. And let's say I'm working in Boston. Well, I'm going to have to leave like 3 hours early to ensure that I actually get there on time. There's so many things that are outside of your control. And that's what you have to be taking into consideration.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. 100% correct. Chad, Neil, any final closing thoughts for you guys before we wrap it up today?
Really none here, Dallas. I mean, just a huge thank you for giving us the opportunity to share, a LinkDrive solution. We're eager to work with some of your customers. If they have questions, I'm sure we're going to hear from you. But, just thank you so much.
All righty, appreciate it. Well, everyone,
Yeah, thank you, Dallas. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no problem, Neil. Appreciate everybody joining today, and hope everyone has a great day and a great 4th of July. Thanks so much.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you.